how critical are these rare earth minerals to the world's trading?
Well, as you said, they're vital ingredient in many of a long range of high technology product lines. And these products have become increasingly important in global trade. So the fact that China has a monopoly is a big issue for the West. So on paper, if you look at the concerns of Europe and the United States and Japan, they would have legitimate grounds in filing a case with the WTO because China has levied export quotas. And they've done it in such a way that prices for Chinese producers are lower than foreign producers. So the West is arguing that Chinese producers have a comparative advantage or competitive advantage, an unfair advantage in this regard.
The Chinese say we are just responding to a rise in Chinese domestic demand.
The Chinese look at this same set of issues and they would say this is all being blown out of proportions. After all, China only has 1/3 of the global reserves of these minerals. The bulk of it lies in the West, the United States, Canada, and Australia. They warned 2 or 3 years ago, in fact, that growth in supply and production in China would not be adequate to meet global demand. So export quotas would have to be levied. So what happened over the last 2 or 3 years? Nothing happened, in fact. So Western producers now find themselves in a situation where there is a dwindling supply and not enough to meet their needs.
So you're saying that Western producers of rare earth minerals should just be exploiting their own resources?
Well, if you go back 3 decades, the bulk of these minerals were produced outside of China. China produced very few of these things. And the major reason is that they're environmentally very damaging. So most countries don't want to produce it. China can produce these things at lower cost, and it can produce this in remote areas where the environmental consequences are actually minimized. But China's response is very simple. You have to produce more of these. You can't ask us to produce more of these. These are also causing political problems and environmental consequences for our own people.
Okay, whatever the rights and wrongs of the trade argument, what's the damage in terms of the knock-on impact in China's relations with Europe and America and also with Japan regionally?
Well, this is another example of what I think are increasing concerns in the West of so-called unfair trade practices being practiced by China, whether it's subsidy through its banks for producers, whether it's providing free land for firms, whether it's subsidies for exporters. Rare earth is another example of what the West sees as unfair.
But is that the real issue, or is it lack of American competitiveness?
Well, I think that the point would be the following. If you have huge financial budgetary deficits, you're going to have a major trade deficit with China, and that's the case in the United States, less so with Europe. So China would say, yes, you focus on this one product, there may be an issue, but the real issue is you haven't gotten your financial policies in order.
Okay, Yukon Huang, thank you very much, as ever, for coming in. I hope you'll come back in again soon.
You're welcome.